the ladder pipe, and here is indeed a couple of firefighters that have finally made their way to this roof here. So now they're going to begin to vent this and try to prevent it from getting as bad as the main building. You know, the other concern was this one right here on the opposite side, this one to the west of the main fire. This one appears to be okay right now. I'm not really seeing any smoke or embers drifting towards it. Still very, very concerning just because these buildings are so tightly packed together. But right now we definitely have two buildings on fire with, you know, another one certainly in jeopardy.
Well, just shows the bravery of our fire department and firefighters that have got up on that ladder, that are going to get on that roof and, as you say, try to vent the roof that will allow the fire and smoke to come out of the top.
Right, yeah, they need to get the oxygen out and let it go so it doesn't, you know, fester up and get the heat out of the roof. And so that's what they're doing when they're venting it. And that is, you know, usually what kind of lets down. Now you see him kind of poking it there. It's, you know, there's a better term for it, but with a stick, basically, looking for weak spots in the roof as he goes along. And you see it coming out of the vents, though. Now, you know, as Des pointed out, this is virtually exactly how the first building caught fire. It got in that attic. This is exactly what we saw overhead, with smoke pouring out of the vents there and out of the eave of the attic, which is, you know, how the first building caught fire. So I hate to say it, but I think we're kind of on a collision course here for the exact same thing to happen to this building that we just saw happen with the other building.
Well, certainly hope that does not happen. As Desmond, you could come back in here. We're trying to determine, we know about one patient specifically, haven't heard about other people possibly being injured or even inside those buildings at this time. We certainly hope they aren't, and I would think with that one patient that we can say that they are occupied.
There we go.
All right, Des?
Yes, just the one person that we're aware of right now. But here you can see firefighters coming, you know, into the rear units here, and definitely we're trying to make sure that everyone is out of here. After they get the fire vented, then they can go in and fight the fire from the interior here. But it's just getting really, really bad now. Unfortunately, I fear it just may be a little bit too late for these firefighters as they just now begin to vent this fire that has begun to chew through, you know, the common attic in that building as well. We'll continue to move back around to the west side of the fires. We're just getting a lot of glare here from the sun as it starts to set to the west, and obviously with all this smoke. So we'll come around here to the west side to get rid of some of that glare. And we still have the carport going. This is where it all started. Back here in the rear, and there's just a couple of embers that got underneath the eaves of this building in the center of the shot, and look what happens. All it takes is one little spark, especially with conditions like this.
Oh, there's the flames.
It's just too ripe for firefighters, and now we can see actual flames ripping through the building, the ceiling of the second building.
And look how close those firefighters are to those flames.
I mean, they're right there. And Pat, you know, I just want to give you a quick update. We got some additional information about the building from LA City Fire.
Yeah.
Each of these buildings has 32 apartment units in it. So hopefully all those people got out. They're about 19,000 square feet apiece. They do say there's structural compromise to that first building, which obviously we can see from SkyCal. And then the patient, the woman that they wheeled out, we saw that, is in fair condition. Her injuries are unspecified, but she is still being medically assessed at scene. She is yet to be transported to a hospital. So that could be a good sign that they're not rushing her out.
Oh, yeah, look at them work right there. But you know what? So you haven't heard anything about anyone else being injured, but it does sound like those apartments were occupied.
Yeah, this was not a vacant. These weren't vacant buildings. I actually lived not far from here. Drove past these today. These are active apartment buildings that people live in. This is not an abandoned, building situation here. So, you hate to think about all the people that are losing stuff now. That first building is, I can't imagine there's going to be any really salvageable things in that first building, and we're on the way to the second building now here as well.
Yeah, we just hope that they all got out.
Yeah.
You know what? We've been talking about conditions and mentioned that, if we had some strong winds going, it would certainly be a very different situation here, much more dangerous, and more buildings, I would imagine, catching fire. We're going to bring in Evelyn Taft.
Right in the fire. Wow.
Okay, what'd you say, Des?
It looks like the fire. They're practically right in the actual flames here. It's just an incredible thing to see with the firefighters. They just do it so casually. Yeah,
and they're
really. really
they're
an
walking,
incredible thing to see.
As you said, they're walking
Yeah.
casually by. And I thought the same thing too, Mike. I'm like, oh my God, well, that firefighter, he can't be on fire, for goodness sakes,
literal
because of how
smoke coming
you
off
could
of him,
tell
yeah.
his movement. But again, well, it appears that they've moved back. Right, Desmond? Looks like they were attacking this, and
Yeah.
now they've moved back from this. And I guess rightly so, for goodness
And
sake.
this is actually what they were
Oh, there
trying
they
to
go.
achieve is they're trying to get the fire to come out of the roof like that, as intense as it is, to get all that oxygen out, get all of the smoke out of there, so that it doesn't create a flashover, and basically it kind of encourages the fire to move that way as opposed to spreading out in all directions and then eventually to the first floor. So hopefully those apartments, at least on the first floor, will be spared from all of this. And now that they have the fire vented, they're going to start to put some water there through the top, and then once they're satisfied they're on the roof, they'll probably exit from the roof and begin to fight from the actual inside of the building.
Yeah, it's just amazing, though, the shot that you're showing us right there, because it almost looks like they are in the middle of flames, for sure. Let's bring in Ev, if we can, right now. Evelyn, we've been watching this fire and talking about the conditions, and, it always is a factor in terms of if fire is going to spread or not.
It is a factor, and, we were talking earlier today that the #1 factor when it comes to fighting a fire, Pat, is wind. And that's what you're seeing right there. We're looking at those flames, and really we're looking at a little bit of a wind coming in right now from the south-southwest at 7 miles per hour. When we see a southwesterly wind, that's usually a cooler wind, so that's good for us at this point. But of course the heat is there, Pat. I mean, we are currently in the 80s in the area. You're going to see a lot of red on the map right now through Hollywood and the surrounding areas, meaning, yes, 80s. And we were in the 90s earlier today. So the heat is there, and it's going to be prolonged heat. We're not going to see a lot of cooling tonight, maybe a little later this evening, but the heat is there, and that's the next big thing when fighting a fire is the heat is a factor, and of course that wind. The good news is not super gusty in the area, so we can kind of keep things contained, it looks like. But yes, a little bit of a wind coming through, and you're going to see that fire really raging right now. So just hot, and humidity is doing okay, and we're just hoping we could get some kind of containment. But of course, we're watching where the smoke is going, and we're watching those gusts, Pat, and of course those temperatures this evening.
All right, thanks for that, Evan. As we're watching, firefighters there actually put so much water on that fire. But how pesky are those flames, guys? I know they're making some progress, but it almost seems like that quite isn't enough right now. It just seems like the flames are just going anyway.
Yeah, no matter how much water they put on it. And
Yeah.
Pat, I just wanted to answer your question really quick about anybody else that may have been inside. They just did a full check of the building. They have no other patients. There's nobody in there that may need to come out. But so that is the good news, is that this building they were able to clear, and it is empty.
Well, that's good news, as you mentioned. And Desmond, I guess it takes some time to find out just if any apartments were salvaged. But I can, it's hard to think that that could be the case, considering how much smoke is coming out from those buildings.
It's possible, and certainly I'm hopeful that the first floor of the second building will be spared, and that they were able to vent the fire and hopefully, prevent it from creeping into the first floor, because it was in that common attic. I mean, it looks like pretty much identical construction to the building where this began, and it's still just crazy to think, because it actually began back here in this carport, which is still smoldering with whatever that was. There may actually be a dumpster. I'm hearing people on Twitter, I'm not sure if they were on the scene, but saying that it may have started in a dumpster in the carport. So, who knows what that could have been. Any number of things, something flammable or some oily rags or something like that. Could have been a spontaneous combustion fire. It's certainly possible. We've just been seeing an incredible amount of fires this week. Almost, as soon as the mercury began to rise, we've been seeing, almost 10 fires a day all over Southern California. And this has been the most destructive one that we have seen so far this week. Sadly, a lot of folks are losing their homes right now in Hollywood.
Yeah, and what's really sad about this too is the fires that we've seen have primarily been wildfires or brush fires, small or large. Certainly not one that has gotten into a commercial building. But here we are, and temperatures are hot. So as we said, conditions could have a lot as to how these fires are fought, whether it's brush or whether it's in the middle of the city like this.
Yeah, and I want to point out something, Pat, on the right side. So as Des looks at the smoke come out, you see how fast and aggressive that smoke is coming out of the roof there. They call that pressurized smoke, which means the fire still has a lot of power underneath of it, which is one of the reasons why they want to cut open the roof and vent this so that this fire doesn't have as much aggression, for lack of a better word. But you can see how fast and hard those flames are pushing out. That means there's still a lot burning down there.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Every time we see them put fire, we think that, that they've made some progress, but at the same time, that flame or those flames are still really, really strong. So that's going to take some time. If you guys can walk us through once they get these flames under control, they're going to want to get inside the building if they can to check and see if any floors or any units were salvageable.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Once this is out, they're going to be, well, two things. They're going to be monitoring for hot spots for, I would imagine throughout the night. Things will smolder for a long time. And then, you can't really get into anything that's left and maybe salvage it until they can, arson investigators can get out here and do their investigation. And I say arson investigators, it doesn't necessarily mean it's suspicious, but
they do it anyway.
Right. When you
it's mandatory.
Exactly. When you have a fire of this size, you're not definitively sure on the start, they're going to bring it out because you have a lot of people's lives now involved in this. This is more than, a car fire. So it's going to be a long time before they can get through. What they'll immediately do, though, is go through all of the rubble and make sure they'll do what they call a primary and a secondary search of the building and make sure that, that nobody is inside still, that maybe, nobody that they didn't see the first time around. So they'll do that first and then, the investigation phase, and then maybe some of these people can try to get some of their belongings once it's no longer a crime scene.
Well, we see a firefighter there going, looked like he was going up some steps, maybe to get, I don't know if he's going to get on the roof or trying to get in the unit. Can you describe what we're looking at here, Des?
Yeah, it looks like they are going into some of the second floor units where they're able to gain access here so that they can, try to get some of those hose lines. You see all of the hose lines they have ready here connected to try to get inside here. Right now. So here comes a firefighter right out from the inside. So obviously safe enough for them to go inside. So it looks like, the bulk of this fire may actually still be in the attic. So, maybe some of these folks even that have second floor apartment homes here, maybe some of them will be spared from all of this. We'll widen out and see if we can check on the other fire here. This was the one from just maybe about a half hour ago, when we first got on the scene of this one. Obviously looks a lot worse, but you still have, actually now the roof has mostly collapsed, it looks like at this point. You can actually see firefighters there in the middle there through the second stories. We can now see through the burnt out roof at the firefighting effort that continues in that first building. We'll widen out and show you all of the firefighters that are on this right now. So many ladder trucks out here. I would say at least a dozen of them on this one. At least they have been able to prevent it from spreading to this corner unit. You have one of the hook and ladders here ready just in case one of these ladder trucks, in case they need to get any firefighters on top of that roof. And so far, this building still seems to be okay as well. The one here just on the west side from the first building that went up in flames.
Okay, and that was a building we were concerned about, right? Because we thought it looked that second building could really be in trouble. But
right, and I even saw an ember on that building at first, and I think Ev was talking about it a little bit, but it just goes to show how much the wind can play a factor here. I mean, you had that first building on fire in the middle. The wind is blowing, I believe that's to the east, right, Des? And you have those flames that jump to that building to the east there and immediately got it. Pat, I also want to update you, that woman that we told you about that was being evaluated on scene, she has now been taken to the hospital.
All right.
So we still think she is in fair condition according to the fire department, but what exact kind of, if it was smoke, if she fell, that's still being worked out.
And that's the other thing, guys. When we talk about even the apartments that could be possibly salvaged, it's just the smell has got to be tremendous.
And water, the water damage. I mean, there is so much water that is being poured onto this fire. Even if their homes don't have fire or smoke damage, they're almost certain to have water damage from all the water that's being poured on this.
And that's going to take so much to try to get that back to where it was, repair. And look, we still see those flames are strong coming out of the top of that building still. And as you mentioned, that with firefighters creating those vents, giving that fire somewhere to go and getting the oxygen from inside, looks like, you know, they're still putting water on it, but it just continues to burn, which is interesting to me because we're looking at the firefighter there who we know has gone inside, possibly the second story, and and you know, has been able to walk out. So, you know, we talked about this before. It almost looks like this roof is collapsing. So you just wonder how many, first of all, how many stories? I can't tell. Desmond, can you tell us how many stories these buildings are?
It looks like they're two-story buildings here. You know, you're going to have, I would imagine that the first floor is all one set of apartments, and then the second floor is another set of units here. So yeah, gosh, still really, really powerful flames coming out of the attic of this one, but you're starting to see some spurts of water coming from the inside, I think. So this is where I believe, like Mike was saying earlier, we're probably going to see less, if any, water coming from the roof, and now the fire being fought from the interior. All of these firefighters standing by on the outside, more and more hose lines. This is just, you know, one cadre of the firefighters that are standing by and maybe getting ready to go back in. But look at all the hose lines that they have hooked up here to try to now contain this to two buildings. This one over here looks to be a more modern building, not going to have one of those common attics, which is so effective for fires. Probably has a modern sprinkler system as well. And there's a little bit more distance between the corner building and the second building on fire than there is between the first and second building. So hopefully all of that will equal to this building here on the corner being okay with all of this.
Yeah, that building almost looks like pristine white, certainly compared to the buildings right across from it, the one that we're looking at in the middle there that has all that fire damage.
Pat, I just want to point out really quick, you know, how many resources we have on this. I'm just looking up the different engines and trucks that are on scene, and we've got one, you know, from all over. Sherman Oaks, Studio City, up by Universal Studios, all over the west side, Hollywood, you know, even LA County from West Hollywood. So they've really got a ton of resources on this. The furthest one I see right now is going to be like Engine 88. They're up in Sherman Oaks off Sepulveda and Magnolia up by the 405 and the 101. So that's a decent distance for them. So, but that's how many resources they need to fight this fire right now.
No, that's when you have a greater alarm fire,
yeah.
Right? You can use, and you know what? Looking from here, you almost wouldn't think that it was that it needed as many resources that we've just talked about. Does that make sense, Desmond? I mean, you know, we've seen fires, for sure, at buildings, but you know, to hear what Mike just said about all those units coming from those different areas, it's pretty remarkable to me, especially when we think that the other building is okay. And maybe that was because of the work of all those firefighters. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, you know, you'll notice sometimes, a lot of times with firefighters, where they will definitely not hesitate to upgrade a fire from, you know, first alarm to second alarm, third alarm, major emergency, or whatever they have to do to trigger the extra firefighters needed for something like this, because they realize how quickly a fire could spread, and we see how fast things spread from, you know, this first building to the second. It didn't take very long, where we were saying, I'll zoom in right here. This corner of the second building here is where we just saw a little bit of smoke, and then, you know, less than 10 minutes later, we started to see almost, you know, the entire attic on fire. And so that is why, you know, you have some of these, you know, battalion chiefs and dispatchers calling for more and more firefighters from, you know, wherever they can get them. And certainly we've been seeing some of the other agencies just throwing everything they possibly can at some of the, you know, wildfires that we've seen cropping up to try to contain them to 10 or 20 acres before they blow up to thousands of acres. So kind of a similar strategy, especially now as we enter the hotter months, where it just is that much easier for fire to spread like this.
All right, let's give another locator, if we will, just to make sure. Hollywood and North Ogden?
Yeah, this is Hollywood near Genesee. Your major cross is going to be Fairfax. It's Hollywood Boulevard. Yeah, Des just put up map tracker there. So yeah, you see Hollywood and Genesee. Your big cross is going to be Fairfax. This is just east of Fairfax Boulevard. Or I believe Fairfax is an avenue, but between Ogden and Genesee is where these buildings are. And you know, as Des gave us a shot of that apartment building, it's interesting to see how it basically started spreading the exact same way as the first one did. It started from kind of the rear of the building. It's pushing through that common attic. And so far, there hasn't really been any roof collapse yet. So hopefully, they'll be able to get this under control. But it's just, as Des pointed out, the carport is still smoldering. The first building is still smoldering. The second building's on fire. So firefighters really have their hands full here trying to deal with this. And I was just kind of looking at their information system, their CAD system, if you will, and they still have additional resources coming. They still have another engine that's on the way, another ambulance that's on the way, another truck that's on their way. They've got Squad 21 that's on their way, another EMS captain that's on their way. And, just because there's an EMS captain coming doesn't mean that there are more patients. It's, kind of a thing that they just have to do because you have so many firefighters here. Last check, I think they told us they had either close to 100 or 88 firefighters was the last one. Last update that I had, that's a lot of firefighters.
And you know what? And we don't know if maybe a firefighter has been injured. I don't want to put that out there, but it could signify a number of things.
Right.
In terms of them having ambulance and emergency services. Well, obviously, they are really rushing to try to get this fire completely out. I think we've been on this for, quite some time. We started before the 6 o'clock hour.
Yeah, the original dispatch for LAFD was 5:21. So we hit the 1 hour mark about 5 minutes ago.
All right, and it's still going.
Yep.
And just want to make sure again, to tell our viewers exactly the first building, that's where the most damage is. Correct?
Yeah, correct. Yes. Yeah, that middle building where this started, that's where it really ripped through. They doesn't seem, and Des, I mean, I'd like your opinion too, like it doesn't seem like that second building has so far the kind of damage that the first one does, although it's kind of always hard to tell with that smoke.
Yeah, it is still kind of raging in that second building now. So maybe, unfortunately, too early to say. It may end up being kind of similar as far as the destruction here. And we're coming around here to see if we can get a look inside of that carport to see what it was, possibly a dumpster that may have burned. I want to use a tool here from our map tracker here where I can actually draw a line the distance from where that began to where it spread. And you can see it's almost 30 feet from the rear of the carport to the rear of the building there where that fire was able to spread. And you can see, the smoke, how it's going a little bit to the north. So it's so unfortunate here how it just took a little ember blowing from whatever that was there, caught underneath the eave, went, traveled 30 feet and upward towards that common attic. It was just like a horrible perfect storm here. Really a horrible luck for these folks, how this has all transpired to, ruin some folks' homes in Hollywood here.
Hey, bud. Wow. What's all this?
Hawaii was too expensive, so I brought it here.
With Priceline, you could actually take that trip for less than all this.
I made a horrible mistake.
Go to your happy price, Priceline. Mount Plus.
It is an out-of-this-world birthday celebration and a surfboard-stealing sea otter that you gotta see. Hello, I'm Jeff Vaughn, and this is your Twilight Highlight, streaming on CBS News Los Angeles. Let's get to this story first. NASA is celebrating the one-year anniversary of the James Webb Space Telescope today by releasing these images it captured of the closest star-forming region to Earth, located just 390 light years away. According to NASA, the Ro-Ophiuchi Cloud Complex has approximately 50 stars similar in mass to our sun. Wow! Researchers say this image allows us to see the beginning of another star's story. Get to this story here. Longboard larceny. You're going to love it. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is warning people of an aggressive sea otter near a popular surf spot in Santa Cruz, following reports of the otter accosting surfers. It's kind of like a tug of war with their surfboards. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife says the 5-year-old female is known as Otter 841. She was born in captivity at the Monterey Bay Aquarium before being released into the wild. Now authorities say they're going to work to catch the animal and take it out of the wild. Maybe she just wanted to hang 10. That's today's Twilight Highlight. I'm Jeff Vaughn. And remember, we're streaming 24/7 on CBS News Los Angeles.
That's right. This is the second building from the corner. That's Genesee and Hollywood Boulevard right here. There's the intersection of the building on the corner. So it was the third building west of that intersection where this began, and now the building in the middle there. And then, you know, you've also got this one right over here, very, very close as well. Not seeing any fire activity on that roof yet, fortunately. But LA City Fire really struggling to contain this to just the one building, as it's now spread to a second.
All right, well, we know this is a greater alarm fire, and we certainly expect that more units will be able to join this firefight. As Mike Rogers mentioned, you've got urban search and rescue on the way. Not exactly sure if they have arrived yet, but it's going to take much more, apparently, to get this fire totally under control. And I don't know if I would be remiss in saying, though it does look a bit that they have made some progress through this white smoke. We usually talk about that, but still some flames right to the left there. So we're going to stay on top of this as we watch firefighters try to get a handle on this fire in Hollywood, at a building at Hollywood Boulevard near Genesee. And Des, as you mentioned, they're really concentrating right there on that building in the middle. That's where we see most of the flames.
Still definitely still the point of focus here, but you know, we haven't seen any firefighters. It doesn't really seem like hardly any attention is being paid to this building, unfortunately, right now. I'm kind of surprised. I figured we would see some of the firefighters up on the roof trying to vent this fire as well, but it has not been the case so far. They've just been really, really focused on this one and going inside and trying to battle the main part of the blaze. They have mostly got the carport extinguished. We'll see if we're able to get any kind of shot of what exactly it was, if it was just a car or a bunch of belongings that burst into flames and began this whole mess here off of Hollywood Boulevard and Genesee. But still have more firefighters on the way, probably stuck in the afternoon traffic trying to get here, frankly.
All right, you're watching KCAL News at 6 on CBS Los Angeles, and we are paying attention to this fire in Hollywood, near Hollywood and Genesee, an apartment building fire that has seemed to spread to the top of another one. We've got a number of fire units. This is a greater alarm fire. We're waiting for urban search and rescue, and as you heard Desmond Shaw mention there, they seem to be well, I could see a firefighter on the roof now, Des. I think that's the first time. You see there, right in the middle of the screen, there are a couple. Is that the roof?
Might have been a little bit of a tricky angle there.
Okay.
I've got a couple here in the back alley, and not any on the roof. And now, I mean, it may be getting to the point where, you know, it may be kind of dangerous for them to get up there. But maybe you look at how just within about 5 minutes' time, how that has spread from the first building to the second. Just such a horrible, horrible thing to see here. I think most of the people already got out of this building. Probably by the time we arrived at the scene, this fire had already erupted into this building, and I'm sure everyone who was home in the adjoining building, you know, got whatever they could grab within just a couple of minutes and were able to get out. We know that at least one person has been injured at this point, someone who was non-ambulatory, so someone who may have been in a wheelchair and needed the assistance of LA City Fire to get out of there. We saw them being put in the back of an ambulance, and whatever started all this right here in the back of the carport still being extinguished here by LA City Fire. And just what horrible, just a horrible aftermath here of the first apartment building that it has spread to, and I'm concerned that we're probably going to see a similar result now with this second apartment building next door.
You know, and we were talking about just how old these buildings are and the lack of equipment, especially in terms of sprinklers and even being able to notify fire departments that there was a fire. We're going to bring in Mike Rogers here. That certainly seems to be adding to the problem here. Mike, do you know any information as to whereabouts of urban search and rescue? Are they there yet? I know you said they were on the way.
Yeah, let me, I'm taking a look here right now. It looks like they did mark on scene. So they should have some other tools that they can bring to the party here. And I just want to point out, as Desmond zooms in on that first building, the back half, you're going to notice they're not going to put water on the roof anymore because they're doing an interior fire attack. So now they've got firefighters inside trying to fight the fire from inside, and because of that, they're not going to put water from the outside in because obviously that could injure the firefighters. The other thing I wanted to point out, Des, at the top of the building there, almost top of your shot, you see that firefighter walking around with the white helmet there. That's one of the battalion chiefs. What they've started to do because of the size and magnitude of this fire is they've started to break it up into divisions. And so you see that person, that battalion chief there in the white helmet, kind of walking back and forth behind. It's because they'll assign a battalion chief to each side of the building to be able to call out the specific needs for each side of the building. So I'm actually listening to that guy that you see there on the radio, and he's talking about how the exposure right now, I actually hear them, the B exposure they're talking about, which is that second building taking off. He just said, we need people on the roof now. So they're starting to do that. They're starting to get that in, but you see these, that's how they really break down these fires. When you have this many personnel on it, this large of a fire, they'll break them up into divisions, and now you see the guy in the white helmet on the front of the structure. So you have these battalion chiefs that each have their own section of this fire now that are kind of making some calls with the teams that they have, who then will respond to an area commander or an area chief who will then coordinate the whole fire as a whole.
Okay, I see a contingent there to the left. You see that? Certainly looks like more firefighters have arrived. And you say, Mike, that you heard them give the order, basically, that they do want firefighters on the roof.
Yeah,
so they deem it safe in some spot up there for them to be up there.
Right, and if you see this, so that third ladder, the top of the screen, that ladder truck right there, it just repositioned, and they moved it because obviously these palm trees are wildly inconveniently placed for firefighters there. So they pulled the ladder away from that one spot, had to get around the palm trees, and then they're pushing it back up onto that other building that's now on the left burning. So in theory, we should see a couple of firefighters start to go up there. But Pat, I mean, that thick, heavy smoke is obviously going to be a problem for them too. Visibility is going to be hard. It's hot out there.
Yeah.
You know, they've got some resources here that they'll do swap outs basically and let firefighters come off, cool down, get some water, and then they'll send them back in.
All right, I like the way, Desmond, you moved the camera around there. You got another position, and now we're completely blinded by this white smoke there, but for a moment we can certainly see a number of firefighters who have arrived on the scene, who are on the ground. Just wondering if you can give a perspective, Des, as to exactly how many buildings are now burning, or where we see flames.
It looks like it's the two, the one, you know, right here, which is probably not much, is going to be saved with that main building. This second one here, you know, we've noticed the smoke coming up here now for about 10 minutes time. The one that Mike said, you know, they're beginning to redirect. Here you can see now the ladder pipe, and here is indeed a couple of firefighters that have finally made their way to this roof here. So now they're going to begin to vent this and try to prevent it from getting as bad as the main building. You know, the other concern was this one right here on the opposite side, this one to the west of the main fire. This one appears to be okay right now. I'm not really seeing any smoke or embers drifting towards it. Still very, very concerning just because these buildings are so tightly packed together. But right now we definitely have two buildings on fire with, you know, another one certainly in jeopardy.
Well, just shows the bravery of our fire department, our firefighters that have got up on that ladder, that are going to get on that roof and, as you say, try to vent the roof that will allow the fire and smoke to come out of the top.
Right, yeah, the fire needs, they need to get the oxygen out and let it go so it doesn't, you know, fester up and get the heat out of the roof. And so that's what they're doing when they're venting it. And that is, you know, usually what kind of lets down. Now you see him kind of poking it there. It's, you know, there's a better term for it, but with a stick, basically, looking for weak spots in the roof as he goes along. And you see it coming out of the vents, though. Now, you know, as Des pointed out, this is virtually exactly how the first building caught fire. It got in that attic. This is exactly what we saw overhead, with smoke pouring out of the vents there and out of the eave of the attic, which is, you know, how the first building caught fire. So I hate to say it, but I think we're kind of on a collision course here for the exact same thing to happen to this building that we just saw happen with the other building.
Well, certainly hope that does not happen. As Desmond, you could come back in here. We're trying to determine, we know about one patient specifically, haven't heard about other people possibly being injured or even inside those buildings. at this time. We certainly hope they aren't, and I would think with that one patient that we can say that they are occupied.
There we go.
Oh, Des?
Yes, just the one person that we're aware of right now. But here you can see firefighters coming, into the rear units here, and definitely we're trying to make sure that everyone is out of here. After they get the fire vented, then they can go in and fight the fire from the interior here. But it's just getting really, really bad now. Unfortunately, I fear it just may be a little bit too late for these firefighters as they just now begin to vent this fire that has begun to chew through, the common attic in that building. As well. We'll continue to move back around to the west side of the fires. We're just getting a lot of glare here from the sun as it starts to set to the west, and obviously with all this smoke. So we'll come around here to the west side to get rid of some of that glare. And we still have the carport going. This is where it all started. Back here in the rear, and just a couple of embers that got underneath the eaves of this building in the center of the shot. And look what happens. All it takes is one little spark. Especially with conditions like this.
Oh, there's the
it's just
flames,
too
guys.
ripe for firefighters, and now we can see actual flames ripping through the building, the ceiling of the second building.
And look how close those firefighters are to those flames.
They're right there. And Pat, I just want to give you a quick update. We got some additional information about the building from LA City Fire.
Yeah.
Each of these buildings has 32 apartment units in it. So hopefully all those people got out. They're about 19,000 square feet apiece. They do say there's structural compromise to that first building, which obviously we can see from SkyCal. And then the patient, the woman that they wheeled out, we saw that, is in fair condition. Her injuries are unspecified, but she is still being medically assessed at scene. She is yet to be transported to a hospital. So that could be a good sign that they're not rushing her out.
Oh, yeah, look at them work right there. But you know what? So you haven't heard anything about anyone else being injured, but it does sound like those apartments were occupied.
Yeah, this
We
was
just
not a
haven't seen-
vacant. These weren't vacant buildings. I actually lived not far from here. Drove past these today. These are active apartment buildings that people live in. This is not an abandoned, building situation here. So, you hate to think about all the people that are losing stuff now. That first building is. I can't imagine there's going to be any really salvageable
Anything to
things in that
salvage.
first building, and we're on the way to the second building now here as well.
Yeah, we just hope that they all got out.
Yeah.
You know what? We've been talking about conditions and mentioned that, if we had some strong winds going, that would certainly be a very different situation here, much more dangerous, and more buildings, I would imagine, catching fire. We're going to bring in Evelyn Taft.
Right in the fire. Wow.
Okay, what'd you say, Des?
It looks like the fire. They're practically right in the actual flames here. It's just an incredible thing to see with the firefighters. They just do it so casually. Yeah,
and they're
really
and they're
an
walking,
incredible thing to see.
As you said, they're walking
Yeah.
casually by. And I thought the same thing too, Mike. I'm like, oh my God, well, that firefighter, he can't be on fire, for goodness
There's
sakes,
literal
because of how
smoke coming
you
off
could
of him,
tell
yeah.
his movement. But again, well, it appears that they've moved back. Right, Desmond? Looks like they were attacking this, and
Yeah.
now they've moved back from this. And I guess rightly so, for goodness
And
sakes.
this is actually what.
Victor, why are you still living with odors? Get back in there and freshen instantly with new Febreze Air Mist. That's right, Febreze now has a new, finer mist that floats in the air longer and quickly fills the room to fight even your